All right. Welcome to tonight's episode. This is episode 4 on the Crushing Limits Unleashed podcast. Of course, I have my co-host here, Stephanie, and my other co-host, Chris Kirckof. Now, tonight we are going to cover how to manage a proper off season when it comes to bodybuilding, maybe even powerlifting as well. So let's open this up. Now, what are some of the things that you guys hear when it comes to off season, when it comes to competitors and maybe some of the good things they're doing, or some of the things where they're really missing the boat on?
Yeah. I definitely want to hear about this from you guys being, really in the thick of competition, something that I've kind of, moved away from, where it's like, this is something you guys deal with all the time, yourselves, clients. Like, I'm definitely curious what you guys see and hear and kind of how you manage things as you move from, contest to off season.
I think one of the first mistakes people make, and typically it's with newer competitors, is not reversing properly. Prep is hard, and once the show is over, a lot of people kind of fall off the wagon down the hill into the river, eating everything in sight. And that can really set an off season off on a really bad note.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've seen, unfortunately, along the way. And it's crazy too, because it's really deceiving. Obviously, all of us have gotten extremely lean before, so we kind of know what it's like. We know the stuff that you have to deal with after, as far as, ghrelin, activating the hunger, and your mind just keeps telling you that you're not full at all. And in that moment, it's like you're so lean that you think, well, what's another burger gonna do? What's another serving of this gonna do? And then pretty soon, those small things daily, they start to really add up, and it can get to a pretty dangerous level for some people that can really put down a lot of food.
Well, and it takes time
Yeah.
for people to start seeing that food on their body because you're so lean. You don't see right away what you're doing with the calories you're taking in.
It's interesting hearing this from you guys, because my number one, I would have just said flat out, would have been people that gain weight too quickly. Sounds like, we're kind of in agreement. Like, a huge mistake you're going to make is just blowing up, after it's going to just destroy everything. And I think what Stephanie just said is true. And it's so almost like insidious way. If you're not somebody who's going to, like, show you just went out and just things go off the rails for 12, 24 hours, you'll definitely see that quickly. But yeah, it's like the daily, I ate a burger and fries today, then the next day was pizza, and you're like, oh God, it's just one meal a day or whatever. And then all of a sudden you step on that scale and you're like, whoa, like I'm approaching like the weight that I started dieting from. And then it's like, it's like, almost as a coach, I would think that's frustrating with clients, because then it's like, where do you take them from there? Like, let's say they things go off the rails, like first couple days, first week, like, is there like a kind of reel it back in approach then, or where do you kind of go from there?
Yeah, so we've actually had, I mean, of course we've seen it all, and the number one thing we do as we kind of hit that 4 weeks out from a show is we kind of start to mentally prepare the athlete, male or female, and kind of just say, like, okay, the reverse, if you haven't done it before, this is going to be probably for some people more difficult than the actual prep, which is kind of crazy to think about, that a short time period can be more difficult than a 16 or even a 20-week prep. And as we get closer again, and then of course, the day of the show, we usually go out to eat with our athletes, and it's not like we're really limiting them, especially like we're all trying to celebrate if it's a win or a great showing. But after the dust clears, we kind of have to have that conversation where it's like, okay, we can't really continue to eat like this through all of Sunday, all of Monday, and then into the next week. Otherwise, a lot of unhealthy things are going to happen. Obviously the weight gain, the stress on your joints, the stress on your heart, your blood glucose, all of that stuff really comes into play. And what we've seen is that on the negative side, we get to a point where it's like a week or 2 weeks after the show. And it's really sad because sometimes you can't even tell that a person even did a show or even competed. They've literally lost so much condition that it's like, it's really unfortunate because at that point, we don't really have any other option, but it's like to almost diet back down, which now, of course, we're cutting huge into our off season. So it's like, if their goal is to compete again, which usually it is, now we have to get our hormones in check. We have to almost do this contest prep diet again. So we're really losing track when it comes to improving for the next outing.
Have you noticed the trend? Because I always look back at I'll look back and be like, okay, 20 years ago when I first started training, like you look at trends and I kind of look at things and like I always talk about social media it can have a really positive effect. It can also have a really negative effect. We didn't have any of that. What we had magazines, you know what I mean? And back then I always remember seeing you'd see the ad and you'd see the guy and he'd be like, I mean, and that was the purpose of selling supplement ads was we want the before photo to be, this pro, but he's as awful as he can possibly look. And then you have the poster like, oh, so in the off season, you gain as much weight as possible. And so when you talk about we've all been lean, I think that most of us, especially being older, because we came up in that kind of generation before social media, have also been there where your off season's gotten out of control. So you can speak to people that are newer or younger or whatever and be like, we've been there. Like we've done the quick immediate weight gain after the show. We've done the, quote, dirty bulk in the off season. And it just never, it's like talking about training and injuries and how you try to talk to somebody younger and be like, okay, this is how you mitigate injury. And then the next day they're maxing out on, flat bench in the gym. But it's like, they're giving you all the advice that if you gain weight too quickly, it's going to backfire. If you gain too much in the off season, it's going to backfire. But would you say that there's been a shift in maybe people staying leaner year round? Like people are actively attempting to stay in better shape than I guess we did, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I'd say 100%, just like you said, from the social media. Now it's like, everyone wants to put on the front. They want to post daily. They want to look good for social media, which, I mean, we totally get that because, obviously there's a lot of people that are making a tremendous amount of money being an influencer, posting those daily videos where they're shredded year round. So that's great. I mean, obviously they're doing great financially. And a lot of times we see there is a correlation to where they are doing great. However, when it comes to placings in the bigger shows, they're not placing as high because they're really not getting to it a reasonable body fat level to really add new muscle to their frame.
Yeah,
so you would say though that it can hinder you not gaining enough weight. If you're trying to stay too lean, there can be a hindrance as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe there's really a pressure there now to look good year round because of social media, because there are those that do. But I also think there's been a lot that's been learned over the years that maybe you don't have to put on quite as much weight and body fat to grow as maybe once was.
Yeah, and kind of like circling back to, people kind of spiraling out of control. And Stephanie will tell you, we've seen it to where the clients are so laser locked in that after a show, I mean, they will not deviate whatsoever. I mean, they're just like a robot. And it's just like, we check in on them every couple of days. Of course, we have their check-in day. We go through their check-ins and it's like, they've literally they haven't even had one chip, in the pantry. They haven't deviated whatsoever. And those are the types of people that we really see make, outstanding progress, because it's just like, they just stick to the plan. They see the plan and they just stick to it, no matter if it's off season or contest prep.
It almost feels like, and this would just be in general to the sport, but it's like training, dieting, like contest, off season, like discipline will take you so much farther than, just about anything. Cause that's where it is. And like, me, because I've sent you, I don't know how many of these messages, because it was like a thing for a while. where I'd almost like trigger me, but you see, like it's the post contest, like we have to have the story or the photo or the video of like the immediate, like we are literally stepping off the stage and someone is throwing a cookie to you like it's a frisbee, like straight into your mouth. Like you have to have it right then and there, and it's like it's like, to me, and I get it, but I feel like for most people, like that's like we have just documented the first step to this is not going to be a good off season if we can't wait, even 5 minutes. I don't know many people that can do that.
100% too. And Stephanie's she's done it too, where I mean she's literally eating clean food right after. You guys saw it last year. You guys were there. I did the kuklo. I come off stage and I'm eating fish and rice in the stands.
Right.
And it's like, we had planned for the next day to go train, go eat. And it's like, I didn't really need to binge because I knew I can wait a day. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I think I said too, is like, if you go out to eat that night and just pick something that you actually like steak, potato, whatever, fries, and just like keep bringing the steaks. Like we're on like steak number 3, like keep bringing it, get full. You're like, this is the thing, is like your brain is like, it lies to you so much, like telling you need these things. And it's like, no, if you actually just fulfill that, probably that first like hunger, with just decent amount of food, like you think clearly after. It's like, people do this all the time. Like you don't go grocery shopping. The average person, you don't go grocery shopping when you're starving, because you're going to go down all the aisles in the middle of the store, all the crap you shouldn't. It's the same thing, I feel like, after a diet. Like you're not thinking clearly. You probably haven't been thinking clearly for weeks. Like glycogen is low. You get that brain fog going on. We're not sleeping. Like just get the first meal in and then feel full, probably get a good night's sleep. And then I bet you wake up in the morning and don't obsess about, the same type of things that you were obsessing about having to have, right after the show. And it'll just make an easier transition into, I guess, your off-season kind of meal plan.
Yeah.
The
100%.
first thing I want after a show is a shower.
Yeah.
I don't care about a cookie. Give me a shower.
Yeah. Probably like electrolytes, like fluids, like I almost like, I like salty things, and it's like we're just pounding, the fluids. But yeah, I just don't see many people that can handle kind of like the post-contest cheat meal, and that they're just the next day going to be like locked back in,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know our friend Katrina, it's like a tradition for her. She gets done with the show, she goes home. The first thing she always has is a bowl of ground beef and rice. That's it. Perfectly clean meal. And then she waits until the next day where she's all hydrated, she's good to go. Then she goes out for breakfast.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I think there's like a part of the off season, I feel like, has to do with what you also did and ate during your diet. Meaning, like, do you think that people like choose foods that almost make them suffer more than they'd have to? Meaning, like, I try to think of like a diet, like when we did the Wisconsin show, and we're eating, I don't know how many egg whites I was eating, at the time. Like I haven't ate an egg white in so many years. It's like I ate chicken during the diet. I don't eat chicken anymore. I ate brown rice during that diet almost exclusively, and oatmeal. I don't eat either of those foods anymore. So it's like, I almost feel like sometimes people, like, I don't know what it is, where they get these certain foods from, but they hate them. They're like, it just tortures them. And it's like, there are other options. There's not only 4 bodybuilding foods. Yes, the amount of the list is short, but it's not as short as people make it, to where, like you talked about Katrina eating beef and rice. Like that's like my go-to meal. I could eat it every single meal of the day. Ground beef, white rice. You find these things. And so when I'm in an off season or whatever the case may be, I just never feel this huge desire to like go off the rails, because I like the foods that I eat. And I feel like so many people don't. And it's like I said, the list is small, but I feel like there's room to find things that you like that'll work within the construct of, I can still eat these foods even when I'm dieting. So then the off season is just larger, it's just larger portions of those foods.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like, especially too now with just the knowledge that we have and everything, and just the experience, there has to be at least one meal out of the 5 or 6 that you enjoy or semi-enjoy. There has to be something enjoyable about it. Otherwise, you probably will go off the rails after, because it's like, I know for me, like there would be two meals that I'd look forward to. You know, my egg meal if I did it once or twice, and of course the steak meal. And I don't really like the other meals if they're chicken or ground turkey or whatever, but I knew I would save that steak meal for the very last thing I ate, because then it's like you kind of get the, you know, the little brain boost, and then you go to bed like, okay, I got through today, I can do tomorrow again.
I will say that there are a couple things that I incorporate in an off season that I won't eat in prep. And it's just because when I'm in prep, I don't utilize Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. We cut the dairy, but I do like to utilize them in an off season for a change in taste, and also for the benefits that come from Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, the calcium stuff, being a female, bone health, different things. And I've also noticed when I do incorporate those into my off season, when I have a cheat meal, and should it have like cheese or some type of dairy in it, I don't react as badly. I don't feel as sick because I still have those limited dairy sources at certain points of the year. But other than that, I always joke, I tell people I've been eating the same form of breakfast for the last 8-9 years. You know, my egg whites, my spinach, mushrooms, sriracha. I love it. I like to eat it. It's been years and years and years. Ever since I started this sport, that's been my go-to breakfast. So
Yeah. I feel like we all have these, you know, we have these meals. Like for me, my breakfast meal has been the same for probably going on a decade now. Eggs, English muffins. Like, this is what I mean. It's like, you know, my breakfast meal, say I have 2 English muffins, like roughly 60 carbs. Does anyone really think the difference between that and oatmeal or creamery? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's some vast difference between how it enters my body and assimilates. And just, I feel like people just torture themselves. Like, if you can't handle it, then come the diet. Like, those are the people that they just always end up seemingly cheating, or worse, like we're going to diet for 10 weeks and then quit it, you know, 6 weeks out. And that to me is always heartbreaking to me. I'm assuming as coaches that you feel the same way, seeing somebody, you know, quit a diet or even quit an off season because they couldn't, you know, they had to cheat. I got upset hearing, you know, it's like people that diet and you want to show off your physique, you put in this work. It's not just on stage. I would think like walking around after a show, like you want to maintain, you know, this form of shape. And so to hear people go into an off season and like a week after they did a show, you can't even tell they competed, like that's heartbreaking. And that's not even happening to me. It's not even happening to my clients. Like that's, to me, is upsetting, you know, to see that.
Yeah, it is really tough, you know, because like we touched on, it's just it's almost like you have nowhere to go. Once you've hit the point of no return, like there's not a whole lot you can really do. You've done too much damage, you know, and it is heartbreaking to see, of course.
Yeah. I'll let me ask you this. You're a terrible person to ask this question to, so I'm actually going to direct it to Stephanie. Off-season cardio. So, because Chris has no business like speaking about cardio because he just hates it so much. So, but it's like, where does cardio play a role in your guys' training, and then also like your clients in terms of is it there for calorie control on some level? We're going to burn some calories. Is it there for, you know, recovery? Like, where does cardio play a role in off season?
It's still very important. And that's probably the number 2 mistake we see is people get done with a show and you're doing high levels of cardio to get lean. And then suddenly for like a week, they just stop doing cardio and then they start shoving food in their mouths and it's just chaos on the body. But throughout an off season, I always continue to do cardio. It's just not as much, you know, when I'm close to a show. But I believe it's good for cardiovascular health. It's good so then when I do go into prep, it's not as like deadly feeling when I do start cardio again. My body's still just, you know, running at a good pace that we can start to increase cardio, and I don't get like swelling in my legs. I don't feel awful. So, and most clients do a minimal amount of cardio deep into an off season just for those benefits.
Chris, have you
Yeah,
been doing your
it
cardio?
is. It is definitely important. I will say a couple things, like you guys alluded to. I wouldn't consider myself in the best shape, the best shape of all time. However, one thing I have noticed is, I will bring in my clients for a session or two. I'll have them train with me. I'll go through a workout. And what I see is that most of the people that train with me, they're kind of gassed out after like an exercise or two. And of course, like yourself, Kirckof, like, we train like Jay Cutler always did. We're always moving quick. We're taking that low rest periods and just going for that pump, going for the endurance. So I find a lot of my clients, that tells me right away, you're taking too much rest periods. You're waiting way too long. Your workouts are too long. And at that point, when I notice, that's when I typically ask them, hey, how long are your workouts taking? And a lot of the times I'll hear 2 hours, 90 minutes, and that tells me, all right, we got to put a stop to this, because there comes a time where you are just kind of wasting time in the gym when you can be growing. So I will say, when I do get into prep, obviously you're at a lower weight, lower body fat. I feel like the training sessions are always improved just when you're keeping that constant cardio. So really, it's a huge benefit when it comes to performance and increasing strength, because those workouts are going to be more effective.
Yeah. Do you guys do anything different when you kind of transition into your off season in your training? Does that also kind of change at all, or?
I'll let Stephanie go first on this one.
So we'll if you're getting, feedback from a judge and there's a certain area to work on, we'll modify, a training plan to work on weaknesses. Right after a show, lifts are a little lackluster, just because you're rehydrating and your joints kind of hurt. But after a few days, you're hydrated and strength does come back. So after a show is a great opportunity to grow, because your body is kind of primed to accept what you give it, in terms of nutrition and training. So it is a good time to try and make a good push in the gym. So bringing back some of the more intense, bigger lifts that kind of build the foundation. Chris?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I like to tell people, at least for me, after a show, it's almost just like clockwork. After about 3 weeks, I know when it's time to push and kind of enter that next phase into like a real rebound. Because after your body fat's so low, you're so dehydrated, depleted, your joints are not ready for those loads that you want to put on, especially too, like, you feel heavier, you feel puffier, you have a little extra, fluid around the joints. So you feel strong, but your joints are definitely not ready for those PR type lifts. So I like to get a great pump, and kind of, keep workouts quick too. And right at that 3 week mark, then I'll start to kind of transition into like adding strength and really focusing on, areas that I want to bring up for the next time.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm kind of the same way. Like, I think that the post diet, especially the leaner you get, like that first like month or so, that's definitely a period where you're at risk. Like, you're definitely at risk for injury, kind of just like the same thing of like the end of prep. It's where you see a lot of people can kind of get hurt at the end or at the beginning of their off season. And it's kind of like the same way. There are people that are so gung-ho food-wise that they make a mistake and we eat too much and we've gained too much weight quick. But the same thing can happen training, to go in there and immediately be like, we know that, like Stephanie's saying, this is the time where probably whatever I eat, it's gonna get shuttled to where it needs to go. This is just such a great time to rebound. You know, the rebound phase, we all know this, and then they abuse it by, I don't want to use the word overtraining because we're just coming off our training podcast, but when your glycogen is so low, your water is probably low around the joints, like to go in there and start lifting heavy, that's kind of a bad way to start your off season. Like you can get growth right away just from, again, reintroducing things like you're talking about, get a good pump. Like I almost have a rule. I'd be like the first 2 weeks, like I'm not touching a barbell. Nothing is getting touched on a barbell. I'm not loading my spine. It's going to be like machines. It's going to be higher rep, but that doesn't mean it's a bad workout, that there's no growth that occurs from those things. And then probably similar to you, it's somewhere that like 3-4 week mark, then I'm going to start introducing the more like compound lifts. Still probably the reps are higher. And, you know, we get a month or two in and then you're really primed to kind of start pushing, I guess, pushing the weights a little more. And I feel like if you take that first month, even 6 weeks, and just kind of slowly work up, you're gonna feel better. Your joints can backfire on you so quickly that if you're trying to load your spine, you're trying to do all these compound lifts, and your glycogen, your water, like again, sleep, all these things are just off. You're just kind of asking for an injury. To where the off season is just, well, to me, it's like a more like, don't be in such a rush. You know what I mean? Like there's a slow and steady pace to this that will lead you to best results. The same thing I feel like with food, slow and steady. We're not putting on 5 pounds a week. Like there's just no way that adds up to anybody. So to go in the gym and start like stacking plates, and like I said, you feel strong, doesn't mean that you are strong, or that your body's going to react to that. So there's a place and time, I think, for both training and diet to kind of ease back into things.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of like along that same page when it comes to training, you know, we talk with other people on different teams. And of course, like with our clients, typically right at that 3-4 week mark after a show, I'm going to send them a new program because obviously we have stuff to work on depending on their goals. So we have, you know, I'm always going to switch it up after, because now we have to shift on the next goal, the next show, the next body part we're trying to bring up. And I feel like this is where some people kind of miss the boat. It's like you just got through this rigorous prep where you pretty much devoted everything. You know, you sacrificed relationships, you put a tremendous amount of money and time, all this effort, you know, you sacrifice sleep, you know, maybe your work performance. And so really you took it so strict for 16 to 20 weeks. And now when they get into the off season, you see people and they're not training intensely. They're just kind of like chit chatting, you know, five-minute rest times. And you can see like the intensity has gone when they were 2 weeks out compared to now they're 6 weeks post show. And it's like, it just kind of looks like they're just going through the movements. And that's obviously no way to make progress.
I feel like we see a lot of that even like dieting. People are like kind of nonchalant in the gym. You know, I probably didn't, I don't know if I mentioned it when we did the training one, but it's like, no matter what kind of program you pick, if you're not training intensely, like the results just don't get there. And I've never understood like picking a sport that revolves around you being in the gym and training. Like I feel like that has to be like your first love. Like most people, I feel like their story was, I love to work out, I love to train, like lift weights, and then it leads to competing. So it's like when I see somebody that's a competitor and I feel like I'm watching them, like, do you enjoy to actually lift the weights? Because it doesn't seem like you do. It's always kind of baffling to me.
Yeah, I remember too, and we'll get to the stuff on, you know, some different episodes, but like when I had started training, I was just under 14, and you know, I was obviously running track and field, and the coaches kind of pulled me aside. They didn't want to embarrass me in front of the team. And, you know, they were hard ass coaches, and they literally said, Santamaria, you need to get your ass in the gym like the whole summer. And I took it literally. I didn't go to like any parties, obviously didn't do any drinking or smoking or any of that stuff. And I was in the gym literally the whole summer. I did exactly what they told me. And the funny thing is, like, once we actually started the season, we were transitioning as we were moving because my parents were working on a build. So we were in this little condo, and like the walls were paper thin. And I'd get home from track practice, I'd eat, finish my homework, go to my room, close the door, put my headphones on, and I had like, I don't know, I had like 25s and maybe some 30-pound dumbbells my dad had bought me. And I'd be in there, it'd be like 10:45, 11 p.m. at night, and you could hear the and like my dad would be knocking and he'd open the door because I had my headphones on. He's like, Chris, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm training, Dad. So it's just like, ever since I had started, I didn't know that I liked it until the coaches said, hey, you got to train. But then once I started training, I'm like, I just love it. Like I just had this desire to just train every single day. So yeah, I agree 100%. I think you really have to have a love for it, whether you're powerlifting or bodybuilding. It has to be something you at least enjoy.
Even on the days you're not motivated, once you're in there and you're moving, if you like lifting, you feel better, once you get the blood going and start.
You wouldn't believe it. I rejected training the first time I was brought in the gym. It was like 10th grade, and they're like, it was playing basketball. I was a really physical player. They're like, well, if you just work out, you think you'd be that much more like dominant. And they literally, this was after a practice. I had like 2 or 3 friends, and they like to lift because they also played football. And it's like, we left the gym. They're like, we're going to work out. You're coming with or whatever. And I'm like, I just want to get in my car, go home. And it's like, the school where it's like a linoleum, like tile floor. They literally dragged me by my feet down the hallway into the weight room. And then I'm like, fine, I'll work out. Of course, it was like, I put like 25s on like the bench. All I did was like bench and like lat pull down. That was all I would do. And then I quit working out. Then my parents got me like a home weight set, and I didn't want to do that either. It's interesting. I went like a couple of years where I'm like, I didn't want to lift. And then it was like one magazine cover, and it was like changed. And I'm like in the gym like twice a day, 7 days a week. It was, to me, it's funny how that happens, because I did not want to be in there. I did not want to. And now I can't imagine if I don't train in a day, like you don't want to be around me.
That's crazy. I can't believe it. That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever told you that story.
It's funny that you say the magazine, because so I had started training, and then like the GNC was right down the road. So, I'd have to have my dad drive me down, and we'd go on their Super Tuesday, the 20% off day. And, I'd get the usual protein. And then one time, I'd always kind of like, it was a smaller store, so I'd always kind of go to the back, and you'd see that the newsstand basically with all the muscle mags. And, as a kid, 14, you're always just kind of like, man, like you see all these shredded dudes, you see like the babes on there, and like, I don't know, the whole thing just kind of looked weird, or just, I don't know. I don't know about this. And then one day, it was the only time I ever picked up a magazine. It was 1998. So Coleman had just won the Olympia for the first time. And I see Coleman on the front of it. And I'm like, I don't even understand how a human can look like this. I just had to see what this was about, because I'm like, this can't be real. And then once I had picked up the magazine, it was a Flex magazine. I ended up buying it. And I'm like, probably seemed weird to my dad, but I'm like, Dad, I need this magazine. Like, you gotta buy this magazine. And then of course, after that, it's like, I just started reading it like the Bible, from cover to cover, and trying to emulate these guys' routines.
No.
Stephanie, do you remember like the first time you trained? Was it in high school? Was it after that?
I was not much of an athlete. Probably the first, so in high school we had like a weight training class for a semester. I liked that, but it didn't inspire me to keep working out. And then I did one season of diving in college, and we had a couple days a week we had to work out, but it never really stuck. I had, after college, I had a roommate who was getting her training certification, and I'd work out with her sometimes, but it never really stuck. I didn't mind it when I went. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. It just never stuck. And then in my 30s, I had taken up, I started doing Muay Thai, kickboxing, jujitsu, and I was small. So I started weightlifting to supplement that, and then stopped all that and just continued weightlifting. And someone told me about competing. I laughed, but then I saw a show and I was like, well, I'll try it. And then I just haven't looked back. So
Yeah. The thing is, like, when I would see the magazine, and this is where I would say to like anybody that's like watching, it's like, if you're new, like, this is where a coach comes in so handy, though, because like the magazines changed things. Like, yeah, you could see the workout, I could flip through it. I remember like Coleman was in there, Cutler, you had like Coleman's back workout. It was true to form. Like, I remember it's like deadlift, bent over row, T-bar row, but it's like, well, how do you do these things? Because there's no YouTube, there's no well, I'm like, what is a T-bar row? I probably went like 3 years where what I thought was a T-bar row was not, a T-bar row. But in my mind, that was all that mattered. I was like, if I do these workouts, I will look like this, not knowing anything about nutrition. Like, what protein builds muscle? You need to eat, more protein than 30 grams in a day. Like, you didn't know any of these things. I probably didn't know any of those things for another like year or two until I met you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then that's where the game changed. Was okay. It's like not even about like supplements, but it's like you were increasing, protein, or increasing calories. These are the right foods. Then your body starts to transform, but I remember thinking, like, if I just do these workouts, if I just do these workouts, like, and just becoming obsessed with it. And that was all we had, though. It was all we had. It really was like, it was like our Bible. It was all we had. Maybe had like the Arnold Encyclopedia, which was nice because there were like pictures in there, but like there wasn't a lot to go on back then. Like, we had really limited information, I feel like.
Yeah, that's really true. And like, you probably remember, just because, I mean, back then, just how it is now, I was obsessed. And they would release Phil Heath's training. They would only do like this series. And it wasn't a video you could save. Like, now you could go on, you could, save a video, or it was on YouTube. But Flex Magazine, they did the series on the website, flexonline.com. And they would do like a video when he was like 12 weeks out, and we would watch it when we were roommates. And then you'd see like 8 weeks out, and then 4 weeks out, and then that's it. And you wouldn't see him until after the show and the pictures were published. But like, we would go on and try to see these, just to see like, what are these guys doing? Like, what can we do that these guys are doing to look like that? Yeah, and it's crazy because now, of course, now the magazine era is pretty much gone.
Yeah, funny how things change. And now you can see everyone's workouts. Now everyone's posting all their stuff. Like, you can see everything they do.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of like what you were saying earlier, like, I wish back then that coaches were more a thing, because like, man, I know I for sure could have used one. And like, that's one of the things too we don't see it too often, because a lot of our clients, are very, very intelligent, and they know that the off season is really where you're going to make up that progress. So like, most of the people we have, they're working with me or Stephanie for a whole year, and they stick with us for multiple years. But I would say another mistake that we see is like, if we have a client, and we've seen it before, where they'll do the off season, their own off season, and it's like, everyone needs accountability, myself included. And it's all of a sudden you're skipping your progress pics, you stop weighing your food, you're just kind of eyeballing things, and it's like, those small things over time, they're going to add up. And it's like, for people with big goals, whether it's to win a local overall or, a pro card or a national title, you can't really afford to have an off season that's so loose. It's just, I also think too that I know Stephanie will have something to chime in here, but we have to talk about mental health too, where it's like, just like a prep, you're going to go 16, 20 weeks and for some of the robots on our team, they're going to literally get like a 99% and hit everything on the head, right? But we can't really do that all year round. Like you can't go in and hit PRs every workout. Every day is not going to be perfect. I know some people, like obviously Kirckof, you've done some deloads, but there also has to be a time to where you can still, you're getting all your macros, you're getting your training in, but there has to be some type of reset, whether it's, let's say, a vacation, or maybe it's a different type of training, that you want to incorporate. But there has to be some type of a reset to where you're not necessarily letting off the pedal, but you're doing something different so that, it's going to help the motivation down the road.
Right. So it's, like you said, it's not letting off the pedal. It's maybe just kind of tricking your mind into thinking that you have. A vacation's a great reset for us. Anyone who knows Chris and I, we travel quite often, and a lot of our trips were 100% on. We don't miss a beat. But then 1 to 2 times a year, we have a trip where we're normal people and we won't miss any lifts. We won't miss cardio if we're doing cardio. We'll stay very active and we'll still eat high protein, but maybe a few of the meals are like 1 meal a day, or something is not on plan. Or for me, it's if I'm out and about and there's like this special bakery or treat or something, I allow myself to try things. But it's not a year-round thing. It's, those special occasions where we're kind of out living life and enjoying life. And it's great for me mentally. I think it helps a lot of other people too. But it all has to be taken into account too, of what season are you in your competition career. Before I turned pro and that was my goal, it was a lot less of those things. Now that I'm a pro and I'm happy with where my physique is, I'm not trying to make strides and strides and strides every single year. If I make a little progress every year, I'm happy. Like, I'm okay. I don't have I've met my goal. Now I like to compete, so that at the end of a prep, I can say I did it again. So it's kind of progressed over the years, those different allowances I give myself in an off season.
Those are really, really interesting points. I feel like, because what you said about the season of like your career, not just like your year, the season of like where you're at in your career is important too. But it's like, I feel like it's a small amount of people that's like that, like, this is my job. I am a professional, bodybuilder, whatever class you might be in. And to those people, yeah, they live and breathe it. It's all they care about. It's their livelihood. So those people, it's like, I go back to training programs. Like if I said to somebody, this is the best way to train, hands down, it's this, whether it's low volume, high volume, whatever. And the person was like, I hate that. They won't care though. They'll still do it because all they care about is the end result. Same when they will eat all the foods they hate. They don't care. They will be a robot 24/7. They will do absolutely nothing besides bodybuild because they are so focused on their goal, their craft. There's not many people that fit into that category. There's a lot of people I feel like that they like to compete, but they know, like, I'm not going to be Mr. Olympia, but I like to compete. I like the lifestyle. So then it becomes, all these things then become so crucial to your mental health. And so it's finding a training program, like I said, training program that you like, that's still effective. It's finding wiggle room within your foods that you're not unhappy about every single meal that you eat. And then outside of your bodybuilding, finding, these hobbies and things that give you something else other than just this 24/7, lifestyle. But I wanted to make this point where I feel like one of the biggest things people could do, like off season, reason to get a coach too, is like, you don't know what you're really looking at. Even like if I feel like competed a few times, I feel like until you've really done it, you don't know. So the average person, like, I'm a client, I come to you as a coach, and what do they say? They're like, I'm 16% body fat when they're 26% body fat, because they don't really know what they're looking at. And it's the same thing when you're dieting down. I'm 4 weeks out, coach. Can you help me out these last 4 weeks? Like, I can help you, but you're actually like 8 weeks out. It's like, so having that set of eyes from somebody, because to go back to, like, it's not you being delusional as much as your brain is, again, just lying to you. It's like looking in a mirror. Looking in a mirror always looks better than the photo you take. The mirror feedback it just gives, you know what I mean? Like, a photo in a mirror does not look the same as a photo not outside a mirror. So you have all these terrible feedback systems, to where, again, until you've dieted down several times, until you know on yourself what 3-4%, whatever that number is that you can get to, looks like, each time you lie to yourself. How many times have you guys, maybe you can attest to this, was like, I remember doing a diet and I was like, I'm ready. I wasn't ready. Then the next time I dieted down, I didn't even compete. I was just dieting down to kind of do the reset. And I'm like, I'm in really good shape. But then the next time I dieted down, I was way better. You know what I mean? Each time it got better and better, until you realize, like, oh, this is not only what it looks like, but this is what the last 4, 6, whatever weeks feels like. And so there's, like, the most invaluable thing I think of a coach is just to have those eyes on you year round, to kind of give you a proper feedback system.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My first 3-4 shows, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Not even close. But I thought I looked good.
Yeah.
But here's another off-season topic, mistake. Let's talk alcohol,
Great
because
topic.
it's party time in the off-season.
Yeah. I mean, we all know how detrimental alcohol can be. It's just one of the worst, if not the worst thing you can do when it comes to a bodybuilding show. And yeah, it's like, I had a client ask me yesterday for check-in day. And I said, I gave him a couple other recommendations or options. And I'm like, whatever you need to do to get your buzz, whether it's a gummy or something else, I said, that's going to be a better option than alcohol. And it's just, I think when it becomes, oh, it's 4th of July, a couple drinks here. And then, oh, now it's my birthday, a couple drinks here. Oh, now it's my friend's wedding, couple drinks here. And then pretty soon now you've really added up to where your competitors, if they haven't had any drinks, then they've been diligent on their plan. It's like, now you're starting to fall behind. So it's just kind of one of those things where, like, excess food. Oh, I had my cheat meal on Saturday. What's another breakfast or, cheat meal gonna hurt on Sunday? So it's just one of those things where it is going to be detrimental in the long run. And I mean, from my standpoint, you guys know it doesn't have any place in the contest prep or off season for me.
I've taken like a really hard stance on it. I feel like for years, where I'm just like, it's such an awful substance. And I will attest, like, Chris, we went to college together, and I feel like, thankfully, like our becoming friends and training together probably kept me from, I've gone entire, years in college without drinking. Chris would never ever, partake in anything. But it's crazy to think about. And I feel confident making this statement that I feel like it's more detrimental to your, if we're just going to talk bodybuilding, you would get further being a smoker than you would drinking alcohol, because smoking doesn't, it can affect your cardiovascular performance, but for the most part, like, you can lift. Like, I know plenty of people that smoke and lift, and it's not adding any calories. If anything, it might make your contest diet easier, because nicotine is an appetite suppressant. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's there's obviously negatives to your health, but in terms of your physique and performance, like you'd be better off. Like alcohol is so disastrous to what it does to you, what it does to your organs, what it does to your sleep, your recovery. I can't think of one beneficial thing that comes from any form of alcohol, down to like I would make these like social media posts and people would come in with it every time. It's like the wine. And I'm like, have you ever read a study on wine? Because they didn't actually study wine. They studied the grape, like the extract of like the grape skin, and like they manipulated the studies. And so there's literally not one benefit that comes, whether you work out or not. There's literally not one. And it's this like social lubricant that everyone feels they need. I mean, if we're going to shut down, you go back 4 years and we shut down businesses because they're not essential, but a liquor store stays open. We did that because so many people have a problem with it. Oh, we got to keep the liquor stores open. And literally, this is what's crazy is they shut everything down, going off on a terrible political tangent, but you're going to shut things down. You're going to cost people their small businesses. You're going to do all these things. But alcohol stores stayed open because I swear, I'm telling you, they locked those up there. That's when the riots would have come. That's when people are like, we've had enough. Don't you like dare take away our alcohol. You can take all our money, our jobs, whatever. Don't you dare touch our alcohol. That's how bad it is. How bad it is in this country. And I feel firm, and like it's something that if people would just get away from, like how much it improves your overall health and life, just removing that from your life. Like I cannot pinpoint a substance that will give you more benefits to remove than that one, because it's just so toxic.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, people would be saving so much money. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, we definitely all agree on that. It's, any serious competitor, even on the local, it doesn't really have a part, like you said. Yeah. Well, I think this is a good time to wrap it up. I think this was a great session. I think we covered a lot of great topics. We definitely want to hear what you guys think about the episodes, what you guys want us to cover next. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like, share it, comment, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.